Welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast with your host, Chris Anderson. In this show, Chris and his guests will share their knowledge and experience on how to go from zero to successful entrepreneur. They have built their businesses from scratch and are now ready to give back to those who are just starting. Let's get ready to learn, grow, and elevate our businesses. And now, your host, Chris Anderson.
Welcome back to another recording of the Elevate Media Podcast. I am Chris Anderson, your host. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, or when I was in college even, during class or whenever I was supposed to be focusing on the lecture at hand or learning, most of the time I was doodling. And I was drawing little pictures all over my notes or my notebooks, or, drawing pictures of what we were talking about for whatever reason, and, never thought anything of it. But today we're going to learn that doodling, or, what our guest calls sketchnoting, is actually a valuable asset that we can use, especially if we fall in that creative, mindset, or if that visual seeing things helps us better. So we're going to dive into that and how we can utilize it to elevate our brand, the businesses, and our lives. Today we have Ashton Rodenheiser on the show today. Ashton, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. This makes me feel good already. Once I saw what you talk about with doodling and the sketchnoting, I was like, okay, maybe I wasn't doing something wrong all those years.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I definitely feel like part of my mission is to take back the power of the doodle. And so many, it really has gotten a bad rap. It has over time, and it really is a powerful little tool to help yourself think and focus. It's doing the opposite of what most folks think, right? They think it's distracting, when it's actually helping you stay focused. And then when I'm in a space of teaching sketchnoting to people, it's just taking those doodles and making them work for you a little bit more.
Yeah. So I guess, how did you come up with this sketchnoting, or what drew you into this as being, your area of focus, your area of expertise?
Yeah, so I was introduced into this sort of world about 10 years ago, which I would probably more coin as the visual communication world. So that's how do we use drawing as a thinking tool? How do we use images and doodles and things to help communicate ideas? And I learned about it as a facilitator. So I was, being in the front of a room, hearing what people have to say and feeding back what I'm hearing in words. And then I was introduced into the world of the graphic facilitation, where instead of feeding back in words, now you're feeding back in pictures. And I really just started experiencing the value and how people engage with it on a completely different level, and how you're able to kind of help people move through their own thinking by how visualize it. And so I work as very professionally as a live illustrator, helping companies, conferences, organizations, and being in those types of meetings and conferences and presentations, and helping to elevate their message and helping people stay focused and allow that information to be more accessible. And sketchnoting is using the same principles that I use as a live illustrator, but just doing it more for yourself, and how you can enhance your own learning and help you focus better. And I think one of my favorite sort of benefits of it is actually remembering what happened after a conference presentation or a meeting or whatever it is that you're trying to actually learn. I feel one thing I've been talking about recently, even just this week, I feel like I've been in it a little bit more of, there's this space where you listen to something and you write it down, but there's a big part that's missing in between, is the thinking part. And sketchnoting makes you think real hard while you're listening. And I think that's part of the beauty that I really love about it. It's not about knowing how to draw anything. I can teach the drawing skills in 15 minutes. It's not rocket science, right? But it's taking the listening, making sense of it while you're listening, and trying to capture it in not just words. But because most of us think in pictures, we're leaning in on how we naturally think anyways, and turning it into doodles, drawings on a page that doesn't have to be scary. You don't actually have to know how to draw anything. So don't worry too much about that.
But, I was going to ask, do we have to be artistic at all? Or does it, how do we, I guess, where do we start? If we're wanting to get into sketch noting and we're maybe not artistic, or we can't draw well, how can we still make it like, I know my handwriting, like I have to take time to make it legible. So like with doodles, like how do we make it, make sense, I guess, later if we come back to it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first drawing element that I usually teach is a line, right?
Oh,
So
perfect.
like I
Okay.
said, this is rocket science. It's a line. And by using really simple elements like a line, like an arrow, like a square, like a circle, can help elevate and connect information. So you can use a line to connect information on a page. You can use it to show the differences. You can use it to highlight information. You can use it to show a flow of information. So if you're capturing information around your page and not just like in a linear fashion like we normally do, or that we just sort of fell into capturing in that way, you have space to be able to draw little things or just use something as simple as a line to help connect information and show flow and separation on a page. So you could like make a really nice looking, very a sketch note that is like really valuable to you just by using some words and some lines at its like core. You can get fancier. You can add a square. You can use containers to elevate information, to show emphasis, to group ideas together. And a container can be something as simple as a square. Like, you can go ahead and make it as fancy as you want, but at its core, you can benefit and learn sketchnoting skills while also not really knowing how to draw anything. And I always say everyone know, if you know how to write letters, you know how to draw, because that's all letters are, is drawings in disguise. Because they are circles, they are lines, they are squares, they are, things like that. And you can just lean in on those principles. So it's not about, a part of it is like redefining what drawing is. Mm-hmm. And drawing can be your best thinking tool. It's not something that is other or that is to be admired or like, I can't do that, but they can, right? It's really kind of like taking back the pen in a way of saying like, no, I can use this and help me understand ideas for myself, or when I'm listening to something to try to capture it in a way, and using drawing as your greatest ally to help you think and learn. And it's not something that has to be beautiful, or you have to know how to draw something. You can build, I call it your visual vocabulary. You can build that over time. But when I started, I'm very creative throughout my life, but I didn't actually know how to draw anything. So I had the like listening and the thinking as a facilitator down, but I didn't know how to draw anything. So I had to start learning how to draw things. And just over time, you draw something once, and then you remember how to draw the next time, and then you change something about it the next time. And then eventually you kind of land into, when someone says vision, or someone says collaboration, or someone says something that even is a little bit obscure, you already know how to draw something because you've done it before.
Okay. And so like with that, like, I guess, how does this sketchnoting help people remember better? Like, is it just about memory? Is it just about memorization doing the sketchnoting, or is there other, positive things that can come from it?
Yeah. So a lot of times sketchnoting also adds in an emotional element to whatever it is that you're learning or thinking about. And when you add in an emotional element into whatever it is that's going on, it does help solidify that learning and that memory. But sometimes, like, of course, when I'm doing it like professionally in a room, it can help people feel heard and seen in a way they've never experienced before, right? Because they're seeing not just, someone off the side taking notes that goes into a report that you never see again, but you actually see what you said on a wall, right? So from a facilitation perspective, when I'm doing it professionally, it can really help like build and make those connections and that engagement and feeling heard and seen and valued in a room that you might not experience in a different way. So yeah, when you're doing it personally for yourself, there's this sort of process, and then there's the product, right? So when I talked about being in the moment and thinking, you're adding in that thinking and that making sense piece into when you're listening to either yourself or you're listening to somebody else, you can help bridge those connections a lot better. So there's the process of it and being in the learning. And then a beautiful byproduct is now you have this little visual representation. So when you go to reflect on it later, you go, oh, right, I remember. Yep. Okay. And most of the time we want to be able to do something with that information. So it increases the likelihood of you taking action on something, not just because you can remember it, but now you have this like little visual reminder. And most people think of pictures, right? Like as cliche as it sounds, pictures worth 1,000 words. And it's like when we pair words and pictures together in a way, it just kind of helps like solidify that engagement and learning. And like I always talk about recently about kind of the neurodiversity perspective as well and the accessibility of information. And sometimes like information's really complicated, and sketchnoting is actually a really beautiful way to help break down complexity, you know, and try to gain understanding and clarity. And like, I guess I should have mentioned this too. It's fun. It's a fun way to be able to engage with what it is that you're thinking about for yourself or something that you're learning. Right? Yeah.
That's a great, I think putting a little fun into it. So like, can you use sketchnoting when you're trying to maybe build out like a new product or service, or is it just when you're, listening to information and trying to just, take out the main points from, so say if someone's listening to this episode and they're trying to take points from this episode, they could be sketchnoting things. So that works there, but could it work as like a building block to say we're going to create a course? Can we use sketchnoting to help kind of visualize that, almost like a storyboard, kind of visual storyboard?
Yeah, like you can kind of use some like little tips and tricks from sketchnoting to support storyboarding that you're doing, so that it's not just, I almost feel like I should put together a course just like help people with their whiteboarding, right? Because whiteboarding is like, it's this beautiful step that people I find use a lot, but it's still just a lot of words on a big board. You just have to
that's I think that'd be a great one, because I use the whiteboard all the time. So I guess that would be a good one to kind of dive into, like how can we use that, the sketchnoting within those kind of plans?
I think it's about just leading on those really basic elements I've already talked about. You're trying to focus on synthesizing your information, because I find sometimes we, like even just taking out filler words like the and things like that can actually really be helpful. So you're trying to be really concise with the actual words that you're using. You're trying to use as few amount of words as you can to describe that thing, which is actually can be very challenging. And then you can start adding in some of those visual elements to help connect information and ideas. And one question I tend to get a lot is like, oh, it's kind of like a mind map. And I'm like, mind maps are really great, and people seem very familiar with them. But that is just, it's like a template. It's like a way to do it. Whereas sketchnoting can be, it can be way beyond just like put something in a circle and then a line in a circle, right? It's so like it could go in any direction. And when you're storyboarding something out, you're like, of course, because this is like what I do whenever I'm trying to figure out my own thinking. I get like sticky notes are your best friends, right? Because you can put something on it, and then I'll usually have like a big piece of paper on the wall, or I'll just have the wall, and then I'll put the sticky notes on and move them around, and then use lines to connect which ones go together. And when you have flexibility like a sticky note, you can move things around. Whereas a whiteboard, you're like erasing and adding it, and that can be annoying. So it's always nice, and when you're doing the like hard thinking for yourself, that you also have this visual tool, but also has some like flexibility.
You love listening to podcasts, but have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Maybe you want to build a brand, grow your business, or are looking for an excuse to talk about your favorite hobby. Whatever your reason for making a podcast, Buzzsprout is the place to start. Since 2009, Buzzsprout has helped over 300,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout walks you step by step through the whole process and will give you powerful tools to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. Ready to get started? Click the link in the show notes to get our free step-by-step guide to starting your podcast today.
Yeah, I think, and kind of what I'm hearing, I could be wrong, is, the importance of being able to get what's in your head out in a way that is simple, but that can connect you back to those thoughts where you're able to visualize them in front of you, I guess. And I could be sounding completely off.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Like you want
I need to probably doodle all that out. So
if you draw it out, then you'll be good to go.
yeah.
Yeah. Like you're trying to make, like, for me, it's always trying to make things easy for yourself. And I really hope, like, part of my like passion in life and goal in life is to try to instill the idea that like you can use doodling and visuals as a tool to help you, especially in those places where information is so complicated and it's really hard to describe. And, you know, imagine the opposite where you just have like a sheet of paper and you're just writing stuff out, but like you don't know how those ideas connect to each other. You don't know what the bigger picture is. Like whereas sometimes if you just put a brain dump and you put each idea gets its own sticky note and you put them on a wall, it becomes very clear which ideas are all kind of the same. And then you go, oh, well, maybe this is something that like now you have an overarching theme that you might not have gotten to just by writing random notes or staying in your head about it.
Yeah. I think it's a great point that, and I've heard people kind of like journal by the side of the bed. So when you go to bed, you have an idea, you can like just kind of get them all out right there and come back to them. But I like the visual of the sticky notes and being able to organize them and put them in different things. And shoot, you could probably, do some sketch noting of like lines and arrows with the sticky notes that direct to different groups and things and get really creative with it, which I think when we get into that creative mindset as well, like you said, it has another element of fun almost.
Yeah, it makes it fun too. Yeah. Especially when it's really like complex stuff that we were just talking about and trying to add a little bit of fun. And once you start doing something a little bit that's different and that's creative, it allows for other creativity to flow from that as well. Yeah. And you never know where that's going to go.
What if someone says they're not like creative, that they're not, and they can't get in that creative flow state? Do you believe them? Do you think everyone's creative?
I do. I do believe everyone's creative. I do. I think it's a matter of leaning in on what creativity means for you and how you define it for yourself, right? Whereas obviously mine's very visual, mine's very tactile, like very like combining these elements with words. Like mine is like very clear, right? But yours might be dancing. It might be making people laugh. It could be anything. You might be really good with words and you can like make up your own words. And you know what I mean? Like maybe you're an actor, or like maybe there's something, maybe you're like, you need rhythm. Like my husband's a drummer, right? He's just like tapping. He's always tapping stuff. It drives me crazy, right? Like maybe you're creative in your own way. I think you just have to lean in what it looks like for you. And it absolutely does not have to be in the traditional sense where you go to an art gallery and you see art and you're like, I can't do any of this stuff. Like, I don't even get most of it. Like, this is weird,
Yeah.
You don't have to understand other art forms to be able to lean in on what is your most logical space for you to be creative in. And it doesn't have to be, we call it art with a capital A. Like, it doesn't have to be painting, drawing. It doesn't have to be in that way. It can be in any sense at all, for sure.
Yeah. And so do you find like people lean into that, like your husband's a drummer, or if it's dancing or whatever it might be, like if they can tie that into these sessions of brainstorming or note taking or things of that nature, obviously maybe not in a public space or whatever, depending on what it is, but does that help? Like, does it matter, like the sketch noting versus, maybe he taps a certain way on a certain, like, I don't know, does that open something up in the mind that allows people to be, more in the flow and bring things together?
I think so. Like, I think if you allowed yourself a little like drumming session before you have to sit down and do complicated work, it can help, expand your creative space and your creative energy. So like getting in sometimes I have a hard time with the sort of like flow state, because the flow state doesn't have to look like a certain way. Like, yes, you're in it and you're in the zone, but how do you get in that zone? And you need to go drum a little bit. You need to walk around the block with your dog or throw the ball. Like, it's going to look different for other people. But I do think creativity plays a huge part in getting into that flow state but it's just a matter of like, what does that look like for you as an individual? And you can't compare yourself to how other people kind of get into that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I think that's why it's important is like to know yourself and like know, what creativity, gets you what gets you in that creative state and what that creativity looks like for you. And, I think figuring that out, because there is so much complexity to this stuff, especially in business when you're growing a business or a brand, that if you can figure that out, whatever that mind mapping, sketchnoting, whatever it is, I think it's going to maybe simplify a lot of processes.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out an idea for folks that are like trying to build a business and having like client calls and stuff too. A lot of times, like in a perfect world, you're differentiated yourself, right? Like, why is someone going to choose to work with you over somebody else? Right. And sometimes I'll be invited or I'll teach people how to draw what it is they're walking that potential client through. And they can do it and then show it to them later. They can have a little camera or something. And they're like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, like, for building a website, we're going to do this and we're going to draw. And like, you can literally be drawing in it does not have to be a nice looking drawing. Right? The messier, the better. Like, it doesn't have to be beautiful, but you're showing them very clearly, because you can show people examples of your beautiful websites you create all day long. But they're like, but what does that look like for me as an individual? Do I know that you heard me? Do you know what I want? Right. Yeah. But if you like draw it out for them, I'm just using websites as an example. It could be
right.
Anything, right. You can draw it out like, okay, we'll do this and this. It allows that person or that potential client to know that you heard them, but it also allows the dialogue to happen to clarify in the moment. Right. Because if you go to send a proposal, I'm going to do this thing for you, and that person's like not sure if you know what they actually need, like they're not going to choose to work with you. But if you're in the moment drawing something out, now you have that person on that call, for example, to say, wait a second, maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we want to do this instead. So you scratch it out and you put a new arrow and you put a few little notes or something, right? And now you also have this engagement in the moment. You show that you've heard them. It's not about you trying to get them as a client. You genuinely care about what it is they're trying to hire you for, right? And so you got that in the moment, but now you have this fun little, probably terrible drawing. And like I said, it's okay if it's terrible, to follow up with and be like, hey, here's the drawing. Just take a picture with your phone or like a scanning app. And you say, hey, this is what we talked about. Does this still resonate with you? Like, let's chat about this. And if you want me to send a proposal, like however you're doing your next steps with them. But you can be like, oh, I'm going to follow up with you and send you this like terrible drawing that I did. Ha ha ha. Especially if you want to like work with like fun and easygoing, like people that are going to resonate with your vibe. Right.
Right. No,
like for me, I only want to work with like fun, easygoing people. So I don't want to work with I need to be able to work with people who want to have a good time and get stuff done and provide all this amazing value, but like have a fun time doing it. Like life is too short to not have a good time while it is you're doing what you're doing, right? And working with painful people, right? So like you can, chances are if they're interviewing other people, they're not doing something like this, right? They're just kind of talking head, like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do this, but that just something to think about.
No, I like it. I think that's
and could you like draw your client call? I think that would be so fun.
Yeah, that would be a different dynamic and a different structure. But then you obviously have something right there that you could send. I think about when I'm on, sales calls or client calls or whatever. Like I'm taking notes, but it's like, what if I just showed them along the way? Like, okay, you said this, I heard you. Like I'm putting that here. Like even sharing the screen of the iPad or whatever it is as you're drawing on it, or
and like that. It has whiteboard feature, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Or if you're not comfortable sharing it in the moment, you could follow up and be like, "This is what I heard you say. Is this correct?" Right? And then you're adding, you could do it if you feel comfortable sharing it in the moment, then you have that feedback right away. But it allows you to have that conversation later if you choose just to share it later.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Because we work with clients in person doing social media videos or commercial videos as part of what we do at Elevate. And, I'm thinking like, if I'm on a call with them, I could draw out the storyboard, a little thing. And so that's a great tip and a great idea. And I think it's cool because there's so much creativity we can use out there, and there's so many different dynamics and ways we can go about, our processes, and you can learn something new or implement something from, I think, anyone and everything. And so that right there shows like, that's just a cool way you could be different, stand out, use creativity, have fun, all in the same kind of thing with business. So
yeah. And emphasis again, it does not have to be a beautiful drawing, right? Like the more crude it is, like you just have a little circle for a head and a little like semicircle for a body to show in the storyboard. Like it does not have, stick people are okay. They are
do you know Alex Ramosi?
Not sure.
Okay, well, Alex Ramosi, he's a big marketer and business coach kind of guy, and he's basically shaking things up with how he gives away free value. Anyways, his books he's written, he uses sticks. He literally will draw on his iPod or iPad like his thoughts on the chapter or whatever, or like part of the chapter, and those little pictures enter into the book. So stick figures, little. I think you would really like it from your perspective of the creative and from your sketchnoting, because that's basically what he's doing, I think, on a little bit more
of a different
not what you do on your live performances where you do all the words and it looks really nice, but like just from the simplicity of sketchnoting, I think his is a good example with that. So
and there's a reason why you remembered it. Like out of all the content and all the people you've watched over the years, probably saying very similar messages.
Yeah,
that sticks out for you, and that is definitely the power of doodling and using this sort of stuff principles for sure. Even that, like you're like it was a stick figure, and I still I got it, and you can remember it. Yeah, it stands out for you.
I think the creativity and the simplicity both combine, telling the purpose, like what it's trying to tell in that simple form, is kind of like whoa, like it doesn't have to be anything crazy, just.
We overcomplicate things. We overcomplicate things. It drives me insane. Like, we do. And I don't know if it's like to make ourselves feel better. Like we have to use fancy language because if we don't, they're not going to take us seriously. We have to we have to use like, I call myself this fancy term because if I don't, then people won't take me seriously. Like, and that example you just gave with that guy, like just shows the power of like, we know what he's talking about and he can explain this in a way that makes it easy for you to understand and you don't feel like an idiot. That's part of it. Like, by trying to be like too fancy sometimes, I think in turn we make people feel not good about themselves because they don't get it, and we get like stuck in our own industry language and our own industry terms. And then we're trying to communicate that out. Whereas like if you did a little drawing, a little thing and like try to explain this in a way that anybody can understand it, because a lot of the people we're talking to, like if you're on a client call, for example, like they don't know all of the nuance of everything that they just need to know what I don't really like the word layman's, but like layman's terms, like in easy to understand language, like grade 4 reading level or what have you. Like we just tend to overcomplicate everything.
Yeah, we really do. I just had a conversation with one of the individuals on our team the other day actually about this. Is like, when we're in a sales call, when we're, with a prospect, like we don't have to talk so much. Like we don't have to use such big words and talk a whole lot because, at the end of the day, a lot of times that actually comes off as a negative in their eyes because they think you're trying to overcompensate or you're trying to push the sell too hard. Or things like that. And I'm like, we just need to, say what we need to say in a simple term and let them talk and just listen. And I think, right.
It's about asking the right, like as with the facilitator in me, right, getting into this, it's like asking the right questions in the right moment.
Yeah.
Right. And you could be like drawing a little thing while they're talking and you can just say, hey, I'm going to like do some little drawing like while you're explaining this. So I know that I heard you right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think being upfront with it, like, hey, I'm going to do this so you can see this. No, I'm listening. And you can give feedback directly. I think it's cool and a great tip. So, Ashton, this has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed, this is a bit different. I think it's something really cool to think about and something I'm going to start thinking about how I can incorporate it more, with what I do, with my, my storyboards, with my notes and ideas and sketchnoting. I think it's something a lot more people need to be aware of and think about using. So, at the end of the day, if people do want to connect with you, find out more about sketchnoting or what you do, where can they connect with you at?
Yeah, so I have a whole sketchnote school. So sketchnote.school. I've got a free newsletter on there. I've got a community, and you can learn about the Beginner's Guide to Sketchnoting book that I just published a few months ago, and emphasis on the beginners, right? Like we talk about drawing a line and how to use a line. Like it's really, no matter kind of where you are coming at, it was really important for me to emphasize on the beginner, because I feel like there's such a easy to understand and learn skill that can be used in so many different ways, like we talked about. But we, people in my industry, tend to overcomplicate it, right? And it does not have to be complicated. You can learn these really easy to draw things to help you connect to information and to learn deeper, for sure.
Awesome. Well, yeah, everyone, make sure you get connected with Ashton and find out more about sketchnoting and start implementing it and just lean into your creativity a little bit more to have some fun with it and make things a little bit simpler. So again, Ashton, thanks so much for being on the Elevate Media podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had such a great time.
Thank you for listening to the Elevate Media podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you in the next episode.